this is going to sound mean, but I want you to trust me when I say I have logic for this. I feel like liberal democratic media sources tend to adhere to virtues and standards, just like moral goods that they hold, that I tend to agree with, that the Conservative Party just doesn't.
All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of Discourse Debriefs. We're getting close to the 10 mark.
We are.
Excited. Got a lot of good stuff planned for today. I at least I assume. It's Peyton's week, so he's got the topic for today. Quick announcements, mainly just the debate going on December 3rd at 6:30 in the Kiva Room in the Student Union. There will be food, so come just for that if you really want to. Me and Peyton will be debating some of our colleagues here in the Discourse series about student protesting and what the goals are of that. So it'll be a lot of fun. We're probably going to win, so come see that. Other than that, some of our other colleagues from the Discourse series, they recently filmed their kind of own podcast that should be up probably within the next few days, at the very least before our debate, so be on the lookout for that. I'm sure it was a very, very fun conversation. Other than that, we're wrapping up the semester, so this is probably one of our last ones. Might have one or two still left to go, but we're certainly wrapping out the semester, so we're excited for the spring. See what we can talk about, see how much trouble we can get into with what we talk about, and see what spring brings us. So that's anything else you can think of?
Nah, I mean, that's pretty much everything.
Okay.
This is, like you said, coming to the end of the semester. Lock in.
Yep.
You can do it. You're capable of more than you know.
Yeah.
But let alone 9 episodes.
All right.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
But no guest today. Just my little brain telling me what silly little goofy things we're going to talk about today. Everybody's going to breathe a sigh of relief when I say it's not philosophy today, or at least not super philosophy.
Everything's philosophy.
Everything. This guy gets it.
I'm learning.
Yes, we're converting him. It'll be you too. But today's topic, I just wanted to talk about America's / the world's media sphere.
Oh, okay.
We're talking social media, we're talking, mainstream media, alternative media. I feel like, granted, we've only existed as the internet has existed, so it's hard for us to comprehend.
That's crazy to think about.
I know, right? But it's hard for us to comprehend like what media looked like and how different it was from before then, right? And I imagine that goes for most of you watching too, being the youthful college students most of you are. But obviously a lot of goofy things with the media right now. A lot of it's influencing politics,
right.
Certainly influencing culture. And I guess we'll just start with, when I say media, what kind of connotations do you personally hold when you hear that?
It's just as far as my opinion on the media or, what I think about it?
Yeah, whatever comes to mind. This is going to be a lot more of a loose discussion.
Okay. I guess when I hear the word media, I think, your Fox News, your CNN, but then I also think, social media, your Twitter, TikTok, whatever. As far as my general opinion on it, I mean, there's definitely some good and definitely probably a lot of bad. I would say the bad probably outweighs the good as far as both number and quantity and quality. The media is kind of rough. That's sort of, I think we're definitely on a downhill sort of slope when it comes to media, especially the quality of it. And even the common trope is okay, Fox News is uber biased. I'm that's not even the worst anymore. Certainly not in the news media, but when you get to social media, it gets far worse than that. X is a cesspool right now. Or sorry, Twitter.
It's Twitter.
Yeah, it's Twitter. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, of course. Media. I mean, I had to fight myself not to just talk about social media, but I feel like there's a little more to it than that. But yeah, this
sure.
I mean, God, there's a lot of stuff that plays into the media environment we have today. I mean, there's so much we could talk about. We could talk about how I think it's safe to say, no matter what side you're on, the more conservative Republican side has kind of engulfed the media sphere.
For sure.
For better or worse. I may argue worse. But there's a very prevalent influence of the right over our media spheres. We could talk about, the psychological impacts that specifically social media, but all kinds of other media are having, the divide and maybe even unity in some kind of ways that social media does. So I guess out of those three or anything else you can think of, where do you want to start?
Well, on your point, you mentioned the distinction between social media and news media. Like a lot of that has to do with demographics, right? So like in general, more younger people obviously interact with social media a lot more than news media, or beyond just interact with, like get information from, which is a very bad thing, by the way. And then you have more maybe older generations, so millennials are kind of in between, but definitely the silent generation, boomers, etc. Get more information / interact with news media as opposed to social media. That's just like well known. So there's definitely a distinction there, and it like when we talk about social media, news media, we have to make that, we're talking about very different demographics when we're bringing those up. As far as like the conservative liberal media, conservatives, like even with the different demographics, conservatives dominate both spheres of the media. Like think podcasts, think like Joe Rogan, etc. And then you have news media, like Fox News is like top tier as far as outlets, right? And then like even written media, what do you have, like the Daily Wire, however many other sources there are. Like they're just so, their roots run very, very deep in like almost every facet of media you can imagine. So maybe that's something we can explore. We can talk about why, what that means for us, etc.
Yeah, I guess we can start there. Yeah, so maybe just to like gauge kind of, I think we agree, and I imagine most of you do too, that there are problems with media, not even regarding like political like bias or whatever, just problems. But just to like get a foothold for what we're talking about when you say problems, what should media, however you want to define that, be to you?
So media is here to hold us accountable, largely politicians. And we've entered a period where they don't. I might get this wrong, but there was some reading I did back in like a high school class. It was like I don't know if it was a government or a history, but it was like this idea of, I think it's the fourth branch of government is the media. Is like some kind of analogy that was
I've heard of this, yeah.
And it's like it's their role to hold accountable these politicians that might slip up here and there or a lot. So
sorry to cut you off. When you say hold accountable, what does that mean to you?
Shed light on mistakes they made. So like an example is, take like J.D. Vance, for example. He says back however many years that like Trump could be America's next Hitler, and now he's the vice president for Trump. So that would be one thing, like, hey, no one talks about this except for the few people on the left that know it happened, and no one cares about it, not even the Republicans. So that would be an example that I would jump to.
Okay. And then you would say that right now that's not the case?
Right, that media doesn't hold accountable or shed light on stuff like that.
Sure. And of course, why is like a crazy nuanced thing. But I guess just to start, what are some like main points, or however long or detailed you want to be? Why do you think it isn't that right now?
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of it has to do with playing safe. Because, I mean, they thrive off viewership, right? So if they're... centrist media doesn't really get a whole lot of attention, so it's kind of hard in that aspect. So I guess maybe not then, because it's an interesting question. Because like, why wouldn't your CNN or MSNBC be shedding light on that? They don't have any conservative viewership, so there's no reason they would not want to avoid pissing people off. So I don't know. That's an interesting question. I guess, what do you think?
Regarding like specifically like political media, and this is going to sound mean, but I want you to trust me when I say I have logic for this. I feel like liberal democratic media sources tend to adhere to virtues and standards, just like moral goods that they hold, that I tend to agree with, that the Conservative Party just doesn't. So like, let's say like on Trump's side or whatever, I think it's pretty well known that Trump's kind of notorious for lambasting literally anybody who does not agree with him. Like the term rhinos, Republicans in name only. You were deemed a rhino and excommunicated from the MAGA party if you weren't lockstep with Trump. And I think I saw that it was, 7 Republican justices. Were you the one who told me this?
What's the context?
Or not justices. 7 Republican congressmen and women voted to impeach Trump who were on the Republican side, and 5 of them resigned. That was Robert. Yeah. Good podcast. Yes. You should see our last episode. But yeah, I think that illustrates very well this idea that they're very lockstep and willing to bend the knee or not even participate in the Trump party. And we see this in the media sphere too, you know, like you said with J.D. Vance, like he'll say something and now the modern Republican Party, modern J.D. Vance just doesn't seem to adhere to or even acknowledge what he said in the past.
For sure.
And this goes for all kinds of things. J6th, a lot of people like to write that off because Trump said in one sentence, go peacefully, even though everything else was a little rough.
Like, meanwhile, so you mentioned J.D. Vance, like he said this thing, and then like now no one cares about it, even though it's like a very damning thing. And on the other side, a big part of like the Republican ad campaign, I guess, was like Kamala Harris talking about like years ago how she was like a advocate for I think like sex changes in prison or something like that, and like she hasn't mentioned that at all in the actual election cycle. It was like 2019, 2018 when she talked about that. And like now it was like a staple of the Republican ad campaign, yet she hasn't talked about it at all. So there's like a very different contrast, whereas you have J.D. Vance saying Trump is literally Hitler, and now no one cares about that, whereas Kamala Harris was talking about some policy thing for prisoners that like she hasn't even spoken about in the election cycle, and like everyone's making a fuss about it.
Yeah, where I was going with the distinction between like liberal media and conservative media is there seems to be like double standards, as you just highlighted, for conservative media, and there are no ramifications for that. There is no backlash for lying, or at least I don't know, avoiding true things that are in your past, right? Whereas, as I was saying earlier, this idea of liberals tending to hold more virtues, they, like you even saw in the VP debate, even though both of the candidates were a little
fairly good.
They were very good speakers. It was very good for like communication, I guess. Like as studying communication, I found it very inspiring. Learned a lot from it. But J.D. Vance, A, didn't answer a single question directly. B, the one question they tried to get Waltz on was, well, you said way back in like the 80s that you were there when Tiananmen Square happened. Were you actually there? And he went, yeah, I messed up. I was there a few months earlier, but I messed up and I own that. Whereas the likes of J.D. Vance is unwilling to, reckon with the fact that he called his now president that he's serving under Hitler. There's a very clear distinction, and I guess it kind of leads into something I want to get into with you. Why do you think, and again, there are going to be so many reasons for this, some political, I think more social, do you think that we've entered a conservative media sphere today where there are no ramifications for lying?
I think a big thing, and this is like exclusive to the conservatives, is they normalize Trump and his behavior. And maybe that's not even exclusive to conservatives, because it's like there's 2 points here. It's like, one, the media, they'll highlight, Trump did this thing and it's like atrocious, and they'll like barely talk about it. There's that, and like the other point is, to us, we're just so numb to it that like, oh yeah, Trump said this thing, it was absurd, but what isn't absurd? So like there's this issue where it's become normal for Trump, or just conservatives, Republicans in general, to say these crazy things or do these crazy things, and we're just like, oh, it's just another day. And like that's a big issue, especially when it comes to like the election and voters. It's just like that to them, like a new voter, no one's talking about these issues, so they must not be that big of a deal, right? So like that's an issue for me, and it goes into the accountability of like, why isn't lying an issue, or I guess why is lying an issue? Why, something like that.
Yeah, why isn't it a problem for the conservative side when it's so prevalent? Yeah,
it's because it's just become normalized.
Yeah, well, I think that you're true. You're right when you say that, but I think there's a more important way we could frame that. There are no ramifications for lying. So like one thing on my philosophy arc of discovering myself and whatever, I won't bore you too much with it, but this idea of, well, we had one of our episodes about it, this idea of truth, whether or not it matters, what it means. And part of what spurred me to pick that as a topic is our media sphere. I mean, I saw a meme that Elon Musk posted on Twitter where it was like the IQ meme, like the IQ bell curve, and like there's like a stupid person at the end, a really smart person with like a hood, and then like a bunch of people in the middle. And then it was like both of the dumb and smart people voted for Trump, and then the like medium IQ people voted for Kamala. And then some people commented that said, this is like extremely small amounts of people. Is this meme not saying that most of the people are just voting for Kamala? That's not even like a misinformation thing. That just shows that the people who are heading some of our biggest social media platforms may not be as smart as we think they are, at least not socially.
Well, the thing with Musk is like he is intelligent, obviously, because like he's done all these things. He's an engineer or whatever. Maybe some of that's been gifted, all the money he inherited. But like he's fairly intelligent. He just like the comprehension that goes into the people on the right's heads, like especially these very big talking heads, so like your Musk, your other figures. It's like they either don't think before they think, or they either don't think before they think. They either don't think before they speak or post, or they know they're fully aware of what they're saying and they just say it anyways. Because
there are no ramifications for lying.
Right, yeah.
So I guess I'll ask you then, why do you think this is what's developed? And is this true across all of media? Is it unique to a political party?
I think it's prevalent because it works. So like the election, for example. Trump won the election because of the lies he told. Like I firmly believe that. And there's obviously other facets that went into that. But that is a key point. He lied about Project 2025. He lied about the border. He lied about the immigrants eating cats and dogs. He lied about so many things. He lied about the election. He lied about his criminal cases. And the lies did a very good job of convincing voters that he's like this, I don't want to say normal, but he's this like upstanding guy that is deserving of a vote, and it won him the election.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is why was that a success? Why was it possible for that to be a successful strategy, given how much lying happened there? Why is the American people okay with lying? Why do we tolerate it?
Are you looking for an answer of like the American people are not the most intelligent?
That could be part of it.
That would be
I think there's a lot that goes into it.
Knee-jerk reaction is that.
Okay, yeah. Could you explain a little bit?
Well, let's see. So like, here's a comparison. So there were 2 states in this election that were decided by a majority, meaning every county voted for this side or another. Those 2 states were Maryland and Oklahoma. So Maryland is like top 5 in like education, mental health, like mortality rates, like in the good way, not in like a whatever, like all these good things like quality of life. And then you have Oklahoma, which is like the bottom 5 of education and all these other things. So like that to me makes the best distinction I can think of. 1 is education and 2 is just like the state sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, yeah, it's definitely, education is definitely a big thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like this idea of like ignorance is bliss. I think is, as I grow up to be so old now, ripe old age of 21, I've come to realize that when we were kids, we didn't know jack, okay?
Yeah.
But we also didn't have to worry about jack. And I feel like this is kind of what's happening to a lot of the media sphere, not necessarily specifically the conservative media sphere, although definitely that is a key pillar of how it functions today. But this idea of like, if it doesn't exist or it's not real, then we don't need to worry about it. And that works the other way too, is if it's so unreal that we can't disprove it, then we can worry about it with the likes of like QAnon or election fraud, these kinds of things. And I feel like it's just a series of double standards across the Conservative Party that have both amplified the way the media works, and the media has amplified those systems, and it's kind of cyclical.
It's a feedback loop.
Definitely. And I mean, what, if anything, can we do?
That's a good question. I don't know. Like I'm thinking back to a lot of political conversations I would have with like my friends. I'm like, man, it'd be great if we just had a reset button. It'd be kind of great. But obviously not. What can we do about the media? I mean, so like a big thing that I've seen talked about is like, what would you define as alternate media?
Basically anything that's not any pundit or like group that is not like televised on TV.
So would podcasts fall under that then?
100%.
Okay. So like a big thing I've seen is like Trump took very, very good advantage of the alternate medias, your Joe Rogan, your Aiden Ross or whatever. So,
Tim Pool, yeah.
Yeah, like he took very, very good advantage of those sources of media, whereas the Harris campaign did not. Now, some of that is the fact that her campaign was very short. So that is like a very good reason for that. So I think something we need to do, and I'm speaking as like Democrats in general, is we need to get ourselves entrenched in those media spheres. Like we just need to find a way to amplify whatever voice we might have in these spheres. And like one way of doing that is just like going on like who's the common podcaster for the left on the YouTube?
David Pakman, Brian Tyler Cohen.
Yeah, that guy. He would be like a great one if like just someone could interview with him and you just get him on a platform and give him national recognition with the interview and just like, okay, we have a foothold in this sphere of media now. Because like conservatives dominate the media spheres in like almost every facet. And that's because of what they've done. Like it's not rigged or anything. They've like prepared to get themselves in that position. So does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think I want to build on it too.
Okay.
You're very right, and what we need to do is like as Democrats, again, if we're more liberal-leaning people, we do need to get into the media sphere. We can't go uncontested anymore, and we saw that with the results of this election. Granted, a lot of things factored into it, but I think the lack of proper representation in the media sphere and the fact that it was so dominated by conservative fields really hurt us in this election. But there's another part of that, and I've mentioned it in at least one other podcast, is also like the few Democrat-leaning political pundits we do have in the media sphere tend to be far more like radical progressive.
Yeah, especially like online sphere.
100%.
Yeah.
Because like we have CNN, but CNN, I don't watch CNN because
Right.
I've also lost faith in like mainstream media and most media in general. But I just imagine they're lukewarm maybe, or at the very least, again, this idea of like democratic virtues, they're willing to criticize their own candidate, whereas anybody on the right side is not willing to do that because then you'll be excommunicated. But we need people to rise up, I guess, on the left side in the media sphere that are not like crazy progressives because A, they don't align with the party, B, they're extremely like isolationists. Like any conservative is never gonna listen to you. And that I think that's integral. Like that's probably the biggest thing we need to do in at least the next 2 years, definitely the next 4, if we want a foothold, is we need to rise up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's such an issue. And like what you're saying about like you're more far left on the online sphere is like, they don't realize that very, very progressive policies are very hard to elect. So like you'll have, I heard this argument earlier, I don't even know what I was watching, but you'll have these like Democratic House members that got elected by like 50 points. And then they'll be like criticizing these other candidates in like swing states. As if they are on like equal footing. Like you can't advocate for the same stuff in a swing state because you're going to lose. You have to kind of toe the line, which is what elections are all about. So yeah, there's a disconnect between like the deep blue, if you want to say that, and then like the more purple. Yeah,
100%. One idea I've been entertaining, and I think I've floated this by you, is I want to try and become the left's Joe Rogan. People keep joking, and they're like, we need the left's Joe Rogan. Where's the left's Joe Rogan? And, well, there's a very real power vacuum, and it's something I'm going to be passionate about. So if I end up showing up online, I will remember y'all, and I will remember Discourse series.
There you go.
Look out for that, and, of course, Logan will be helping me if you're interested in that. But
well, one thing with that, and not to, like, knock you or anything.
Of course.
But just in general, like, Joe Rogan offered an interview with Harris, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he did, or I don't remember why she declined it.
Well,
but
theres a number of reasons. Who know if the reason she gave is actually the reason. But like, and again, I talked about, her campaign was very short. Like she was very limited to her options. She was not dealt a very good hand, and there's so many extenuating circumstances that led to that point. So, what can you do? But in the future, we need to take advantage of that. So like
100%.
Joe Rogan is not necessarily exclusive to conservatives. I think he's more, I wouldn't say necessarily center right, but somewhere along that spectrum. But he's pretty good about getting people that from diverse points. Didn't he have Bernie Sanders on there at one point?
I think he may have.
Or maybe that was someone else. But like, you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, granted, the longer we wait, and the more we see, like with Joe Rogan getting threatened for even uttering one good thing about RFK as a candidate, right? Where anybody who is popular enough and already associated with conservative media spheres is being pulled closer and closer into the MAGA sphere right now, because you can't afford not to be, and there are no ramifications for staying there. But yeah, I guess to maybe tie off this political aspect of social media in general, critical to Kamala's failure, definitely 100%. This idea of her not accurately representing the truest American values, like Robert said in our last one, they vote with their pocketbook, right?
Right.
And that's what they saw, and so many problems with like the campaign, even though I do feel like some of it was very strong, but just that lack of media prevalence, be it because there's not a very strong left foothold or the right foothold is just so huge. It was very hard to connect with the American people like that. But yeah, anything else on like the political media side? We can keep going. But.
Yeah, I think not only the fact that we didn't have a foothold or don't still have a foothold in media, but the fact that the media doesn't do anything to help us at all. So like we talked about the economy last week a little bit, and I think I brought up the point where the incumbent party following COVID was just not going to win because of the economy. Now, part of the responsibility of that is the media to point out like, hey, yeah, things kind of suck, but like I said last week, they could be a heck of a lot worse. And like there's a lot of policies that are in play that are making sure that it's not a lot worse. So there's again a disconnect there where things are bad, but the media isn't doing anything to help that, and they're not doing anything to tell people or tell viewers like, hey, considering the circumstances, things are kind of okay. Like I know, I don't remember where I saw it, but like post-COVID and like the recovery period, if you want to call it that, like America was one of the top countries in the world as far as like economic growth.
We still are.
We still are.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. But like we always talk about like, oh man, the economy sucks. Like on the world stage, we're doing very, very well. So there's just such a disconnect there. But that's all I have to say on that point.
Yeah, sure. And I think this kind of leads me into like social media, media too, just on the whole. This idea of just the way these systems work, what they're designed to do, algorithms. Ooh. But I think that this kind of is a good segue because a lot of why the average Joe was kind of funneled into the MAGA media sphere is because the algorithmic system just funnels people towards it, and the people on the in that sphere, the MAGA sphere, are just more entertaining. They're funny. Like, say what you want about Trump, he is funny. He is a funny guy.
For all the wrong reasons.
For the wrong reasons, but he's entertaining, right?
There's another thing though. They make a lot of money.
Oh yes.
Like like imagine I don't want to say average, but a conservative voter buys like a bunch of Trump shirts, Trump hats, pins. They spend a lot of money on the politics. So then you take conservative media, why would they deviate from what makes money or what works in the sense of like viewership, right? So there's a big thing there as well. Yeah,
and like even like not the political candidates, like Joe Rogan's an entertaining guy.
Right.
A lot of comedians are on the conservative side with like talk shows or whatever. I feel like the alt media pundits are all like entertaining. They make jokes, and that's like even I, who like staunchly disagrees with most of their beliefs, they're funny people, and I can laugh at them. Versus like the few that exist on the left side, there's just so much like woke scolding. And granted, there are very important social issues to be addressed there, and probably good intentions, but they're like nobody wants to watch like a progressive yell at you for being white, right? And I say that as a white guy who tends to lean a little more left, go ahead, sorry.
To that point, do you think people or we on the left just take ourselves too seriously?
Yes.
Okay.
Granted, I think we should hold our beliefs as seriously as we do.
Right.
But it's this idea of how we convey them, how doomer we are. 'Cause 100% things should still be changing. We are not perfect. People are still suffering. But at the same time, we have made a lot of progress. And if we're going to make more progress, we need to unite people. We can't separate people. And I think that's a big problem I have with further progressive ideals. And it's why I don't fall that far. But what I was getting to earlier with mentioning that distinction is this idea of algorithms. Like, if people are enjoying what they're watching by virtue of it being entertaining, then they're going to get another one, and they're going to get another one. It's this pipeline, right? And this goes for everything: brain rot memes, doomer scrolling. And I guess I'll just lead you into the next kind of sphere I have in mind is social media in general.
Okay.
Try to eliminate the political aspect if you can.
Oh, okay.
Thoughts on the phenomenon, how it affects our society?
I'd say very negatively. Like what the common thing is like, body standards are a big thing. You know, your Instagram showing unrealistic like living experiences. Like you see posts of people in like Hawaii or whatever, and I'm like, man, I'm not living a good life. When it's like you only see the posts of the good times, right? So like in general, social media is not very helpful to our society. Not to say that we should necessarily get rid of it, because A, I don't know how we can, and B, like there are some good things that come with it. So I don't know. I guess again, my general opinion of social media is it's not the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. I know you mentioned at the end there's some good things. What kind of like good things do you think bring about come from social media?
Connectivity is a big thing, but it has unfortunately brought about some good, or not good, drawbacks and like effects. But it is just like technologically amazing that we are all so connected, and like there's a lot of like communications issues that have been solved by social media, etc. So those would be just a couple off the top of my head.
Sure. Yeah. It's a crazy phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it comes with a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
I think they're powerful in both directions. So first to touch on your negatives, yeah, mental health is a pretty big thing. Body image, anxiety, depression, comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
The curse of comparison is what will send you down to hell, and you're going to have to climb your way back out. But yeah, I mean, I think in a debate that I saw for one of my classes yesterday, they were debating whether or not the government should put any regulations on children being able to access social media. And a statistic they cited, I forget where it was from, but apparently the second leading cause of death amongst teenagers in America is suicide. And there's a correlation to mental health problems that stem from social media usage.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely says something about, the nature of, what these systems do to a mind, especially young people. But on the other side of the coin, though, connectivity is a big thing. I think exposure is a big thing.
Even if the algorithms kind of stymie that sometimes.
Well, yeah, then the problem I would have would be particularly with algorithms. But I'll also admit those algorithms are curated quite well for me.
They work.
They work. If you could see my Instagram feed, you would know that I am insane, okay? But it's funny. But for most people, it isn't, though, and it can get kind of scary and weird. What do you make of maybe kids these days with their like reliance on technology? Is that like a cultural problem? Is it a parenting problem? Is it a them problem?
Technology in itself is not a bad thing. And also, I wanted to bring up what your point, like with the government. I know, like Australia just passed a massive ban for like kids under 16, like as far as social media. Like, I think even YouTube, was banned, or they're at least working on it. But to your point on kids and not even social media, just relying on technology. There's a lot of dependencies, and a lot of it just comes down to the parents. So like if you're just say. Like, it's very easy to just put a screen in front of a toddler and, like, not have to actually parent. And unfortunately, like, it gets reinforced because it takes stress off the parent and, it keeps them distracted for God knows how long. Like, I think the reason we had this guest speaker in our class, and he was saying, like, the reason that prisons allow televisions in some cells is because the TV is the best babysitter you can ever buy. So... There's a very big thing there, and it all just comes down to the parent, I think, of like how much effort they're putting into actually like raising their kids, and whether or not they're just willing to put a screen in front of them and relax. So, and
then just to kind of build off of that, what would you say like growing up, as old as we are, your like relationship with social media was over the course of like school now?
Over the course of school, like. Middle school, let's see, when did I even get my phone? That's a good question. I think it was middle school. Honestly, I don't remember interacting with social media a whole lot. Like what was TikTok called back in the day?
Oh, the one that blew up for a little bit and then TikTok
Yes.
came in?
Well, no, I thought like TikTok.
Well,
bought
there's
it.
Vine.
Right, there was Vine.
And then Musical.ly?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like interact with that here and there. Also, Vine, that unlocked a memory. Wow.
Damn. The fact that I could pull that out. We're so old.
Most of my interaction with media probably was just straight up like YouTube and like watching Vines or stuff like that. So the actual like more Instagram, I think I did have Snapchat, but just like for like, adding friends and from school and stuff like that. So nothing big there. But that was probably the extent of my engagement with social media as like a middle schooler. And then high school, I kind of branched out here and there, but nothing major.
Why do you think, and if I'm understanding you correctly, that you didn't have super big of a tie to social media maybe?
I guess I'm just not much of a social person in the first place. So I think it's just more of a personality trait to that.
Okay, yeah. And then just like whatever you think, your intuitions or whatever, why do you think it's not the same for other people? Or is it for people like our age, but maybe it's worse for younger people?
I think the younger generations is the issue. They're getting exposed to it much younger at a point where their brain development is like at its peak. Actually, that's not true. It's like at its peak during their infant years.
Well, like habit forming,
Right, yeah.
personality shaping, yeah.
So like for me as an example, as at middle school, high school, my personality is pretty well determined, and like there's not a whole lot that's going to severely alter that. Whereas you take like as young as 8, 9-year-olds that are getting exposed to social media, they don't really have much of a personality yet, and so it's very easy to get that personality shaped by social media, which is obviously dangerous. So
Yeah, 100%. I had kind of a similar relationship with social media as I'm hearing from you. I mean, YouTube's kind of like the exception to the rule, I think, because like there's nothing like YouTube, even now it's
God,
like
no.
that's like your free entertainment, people being creative.
Yep.
Some news, but like that was never really my thing.
Yeah.
But with the exception of YouTube, I was pretty isolated from social media, and like all my friends had phones in like middle school. I never did. I don't think I got mine until the summer before high school, and then I wasn't allowed to get Instagram or Snapchat. But I think I was like, screw you, parents, and then I installed it in like sophomore year, and then I felt guilty and uninstalled it like 2 weeks later. But yeah, I had a very similar thing to where even though now I like to think I've grown to be a little more social, definitely back then I was more like I wasn't really comfortable going up and talking to people or like sharing myself with people. Like you could see me and talk to me, I'd be like, oh, cool. But like I wasn't trying to be out there, and that's what I thought social media was. But then particularly with like Vine was there a little bit, but I just went to YouTube for those.
Right. Yeah.
Musical.ly, and then TikTok is where I feel like a lot of our media sphere started changing and shifting towards algorithms. And
just short form content
yeah,
itself.
100%. I mean, YouTube Reels exists now. You should go watch ours.
Yes.
We have funny content there. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, are we cooked?
I mean, on the one hand, maybe, but on the other, like, how much worse can it actually get, right?
Yeah. One question I've been asking myself is like, what were people thinking when the internet came out?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, our kids are on this little rectangle and they're pushing buttons and pictures are showing up.
Wow, they didn't understand it well enough to comprehend that. So
yeah. And like the same things are being floated with like AI now. Granted, we didn't have this phenomenon of social media and technology dependence before AI showed up. So there might be something goofy going on there.
I optimistically, I don't know if I believe it necessarily, but I hope that we'll be able to adapt like we were with, what all that we had access to, in the same way that the next generation will be able to. They're still young, so they have time. And we've all had, our like brain rot phases of each generation, and we've still relatively well come out of them. So
Mine's still going,
guess,
but
right.
but I know what you're saying.
I have to assume that they will be able to adapt at least somewhat well, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I broadly agree. There are definitely like issues being faced specifically by them, but there have been issues faced specifically by every generation, right?
Yep.
And we can't really recognize that until we get older and have more future generations to reference. But nonetheless, though, social media, big issue, potentially really helpful. I mean, is there anything we as like, uncles, aunts, older siblings, like friends, what can we do, if anything, to maybe, I mean, is it even a bad thing that like people are on social media as much as they are? Like, is there a good reason for them to stop?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I guess, are you talking mostly about younger people or just anyone?
I think in general.
Okay. Being on social media in itself, no, it's not bad. I guess probably the habits that surround how you use it and, what you interact with, et cetera, that could potentially lead to some rough things. Could also lead to some good things, though. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different routes that you could go down that are, some are good, some are bad, some are really bad. But I guess being on social media in itself is probably not bad, but it could very easily get bad.
Yeah, I'm going to make an analogy that I know that you can't particularly relate to, but I feel like social media is very much like drugs. I haven't done a lot of crazy things, okay? But it's like there's some good and some bad, right? It makes you feel good. Perhaps you can learn something about yourself through what you're exposed to. But on the other hand, if you have a bad relationship with it and your mind is predisposed to be reliant on things like that, then it can quickly become a thing that's very isolating, very depressing, very anxiety-inducing, right?
Yeah. I think that goes for everything.
Yes, I was going to mention that, but I'm happy that you found it. But I think specifically with things that are uniquely designed, be it a drug or algorithmic social media, to do like dopamine receptors and like fundamentally like work with the systems of your brain to maximize your time with it, those we need to be particularly careful with how we frame them and our use of them. Go watch the episode where we talked about getting students out to vote. I did a little rant about my relationship with social media, but the principle remains the same. This idea of it's a tool, and it can be argued that drugs can be viewed as a tool too. Although don't mess with them because they will hurt you far quicker than like a screwdriver. But point is, it's about the framing, I think, and maybe like our role or like people's role would be just to emphasize that idea of, frame this as something that should be treated like a drug. If you're going to do it, A, you probably shouldn't, but B, be very aware of the impacts it's having, what it can do to you, and maybe look for other things that are more fulfilling, ?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, but with like the world we live in, yeah. I guess I have an interesting question. Do you think somewhere down the line, like the next generations, they'll just be numb to the kind of the effects? So like, as an example, you already kind of see how the reason short form content excels is because these younger generations, including us, got just bored of longer form content, even though maybe it's not necessarily bad. So our brains are slowly getting trained to, we need more instantaneous stimulation, I guess. So do you think there's a situation where that gets so far as to where we just become completely numb to that kind of media in the first place?
That's a really interesting question. Damn, I wish I had more of a psychology background.
I know, right? I guess, could we just devolve so quickly to a point where we just kind of like loop back up?
Yeah, I wonder if we have any like historical reference for this, like when the television came out, because like reading a book was probably what you had, or like doing activities, which probably takes time, and now you can just sit down for 30 minutes at dinner, and that's way less of a time. And then I don't know if there's a fair historical comparison that exists, but intuitively, maybe. I guess. But yeah, I just don't know how neuroplasticity works.
You kind of created a spark in my mind with that. So you mentioned TV. Maybe if TV was the fullest extent of media, they might have. But then social media came along, and then like there's this new rung on the ladder. So maybe if social media was all we had for like the next few generations, that maybe they would become just numb to it. But I imagine we'll continue to progress technologically, and then another step will be added, another rung to the ladder. There'll be some new form of media that captures the minds of everyone. So
yeah, that or
it'll be interesting.
Some terrible event happens that shows the world that social media is bad, aka Trump gets reelected. I'm only mildly kidding. Okay, guys, I'm kidding.
Mildly is doing a lot of work there.
I know. But yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah. So we are cooked? ?
Socially, maybe.
Or let me put a spin on that. You use social media at least a little bit, right?
Right.
Like you personally. Are you cooked?
No.
Why?
I don't think so.
Why?
a lot of I'll use Instagram as an example. I use Instagram largely for what we're doing, and that's like about it. Snapchat I use for like friends from home or some few friends that I've made in my time here. I don't use Twitter. I guess I use Reddit, which is an interesting avenue.
Reddit's a special little world that I feel like
is.
it deserves to be in its own little camp.
It kind of does. But like a lot of the subreddits that I subscribe to are like political and like news. So like I get a lot of information there for better or worse. Other than that, I mean, I guess I watch YouTube, but a lot of that is now political stuff too. So I don't really do a lot with social media, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think I'm fine.
So would you say that like why is it that you aren't cooked to the same extent that maybe other people who are experiencing like mental health issues or whatever from social media?
That would have to do with like the type of content that I am engaging with on these platforms. So like as in Instagram, for example, like I don't know if young women are following like supermodels or whatever and they're getting depressed because they don't look like that. I don't really care about that. I follow us and then like some political accounts here and there. So like I guess the only depression I could gain out of that is just like, man, our political system sucks so bad that like, which is feasible. But
yeah,
I guess that'd be my answer. It's dependent on the type of content you actually engage with.
That's interesting. And I understand why you would say that. And I didn't consider it. I agree with you. But I was also thinking if you maybe have a more unique framing of social media in your life than other people. Like when you use social media, maybe subconsciously, do you realize like this is a tool for me? Like you said earlier, like you're citing it to learn things, even if it like might be entertaining along the way, that kind of thing, or like advertise yourself for this podcast, that kind of thing.
Consciously, no. It's like I guess it's just probably ingrained into me as like it's just like part of my daily behavior. Like, oh, okay, I'm in between classes. I'll scroll through, see if there's anything in the news or whatever, or I'll go through Instagram and see if we posted anything. It's just like part of my kind of day-to-day, what I do. So I guess I don't consciously really consider it at all. It's just second nature at this point, which maybe could lead one to assume that maybe I am cooked.
Well, I think there's a very key way that you phrase that says a lot about it. It's a part of your day.
Right.
I feel like for a lot more people, it's more than a part. It's probably a majority.
Sure.
And it goes back to that drug analogy of, you use it a little bit, you might be okay if it's not something crazy. But like 4chan. But if you use it a little bit, it's just part of your day. It's something that helps you learn more about yourself or whatever. I think I definitely use social media more than you, but I have a similar kind of framework. It's like I learn through it, I laugh through it, and sometimes I doomer scroll, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
I should probably stop doing that. But at the same time, like it's funny. Like I get it. Like I'm part of the problem too. Like I doomer scroll, but at the same time, like I don't have any of the mental health ramifications from that. At least I'm not aware of them in me. And so it's weird because most of the people who, well, actually that's a bold assumption. I imagine many people who use social media in similar ways that I do, at least with the doomer scrolling aspects, the way the algorithm can trap you, will end up in that kind of bad mental health state. And I think that's where your mention of content, what you're viewing, helps and plays a big factor. And I hadn't considered that. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty hard to get depressed if all you're scrolling through is just like memes.
Well, granted, I'm scrolling through mine is like existential absurdist, like our society's cooked, but look at this random picture of a Chinese fortune.
Big umbrella.
Yeah, it is. But no, you're right. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how exactly you use it. I mean, there's good and bad ways. Probably more bad ways than good, though. So.
Yeah. Well, media.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now. Thank you for spending your generous time with us. Anything else, specific Mimi, you want to talk about or float?
Nothing off the top of my head, no. We covered pretty much like a lot.
Yeah.
It was very good, so.
Well,
great topic.
Sure. You want to close us out?
Sure, yeah. You don't have anything else?
No.
All right. Well, yeah, this has been episode 9. Pretty crazy. Oh, right. I failed to mention this at the beginning. Next week won't be an episode. We'll be in Thanksgiving break. I'll be traveling. I don't know what you're doing, but we won't be having an episode. The week after, maybe. Because we have the debate, so we'll see. But either way, after next week, there should be plenty of content content with the debate if we do an episode. So be on the lookout for that. Other than that, enjoy your guys' Thanksgiving. Stay safe. Don't succumb to the existential dread that is media. And yeah, that's all from us. So thanks guys for watching.
Thank you. Goodbye.